good morning from Vietnam. Good evening to you, Shelly. Thanks a lot for spending your evening to join our program and share your perspective on the topic of wisdom. And on behalf of the listeners around the world, I want to say thank you to you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored to be with you, and thank you. I look forward to hearing your insights on wisdom, and maybe I can add a few nuggets to those thoughts.
And Shirley, we've been having conversation a few times in the past. Always amazing conversation we had together, and I'm sure this conversation will be another one that will help our audience to expand the horizon and to understand more about wisdom and perspective of life. And let's start with Symbol by introducing a little bit about you and the work you do for that for the audience to know more about Shirley. Would you please do that honor first?
Absolutely. Would be my honor. Thank you.
Thank
Well,
you.
I always like to say that I have like four chapters of my journey. So I'll kind of give you a little synopsis of how did I get to where I am today. The first chapter is right out of high school. I enlisted in the U.S. Air Force because I didn't have money to go to school and gain that wisdom just yet. So I enlisted in the Air Force. That allowed me to earn college money, learn a profession, get to travel internationally. And after I did complete my bachelor's degree while I was an enlisted airman, I became a space acquisition officer or space procurement, and I worked in the space industry, working for the Air Force to purchase satellites and rockets and ground stations. And then after a wonderful career in the Air Force, I retired and became the chief operating officer at Space Foundation, so a U.S. nonprofit that does education internationally that's focused on workforce development and economic opportunity. And that was a wonderful experience. And so then I took all three of those experiences and decided to launch my own company called SB Global LLC, where I'm an author, a speaker, and a motivational writer and a futurist. And so that's part of why we've been connected. You've invited me to join you before on your show. It's been wonderful. And I've invited you to be part of my book series because I have interviewed over 200 global thought leaders for my various books. So thank you again for having me back, and I look forward to a fun topic.
Yeah, well, you introduced your four chapters of life in less than a minute, Shelley. So, uh, if you want to pick one chapter of your life that you really want to dive in a little bit deeper before we move next to the topic of wisdom, what is a chapter that you want us to dive a little bit in more?
Well, I'm really excited about the chapter I'm in now as an entrepreneur and an innovator, being able to write wonderful books. As you know, the What Space Got to Do with It series. So, book one came out in December 2024. Book two just came out, What Space Got to Do with It, An Interstellar Guide to Success. And I'm just really excited about this chapter of my journey because I'm writing books, I'm interviewing interesting people from around the world, former presidents of countries, leaders of space agencies, everybody in between, from Vietnam to Africa and North America to Australia. I'm getting to hear all kinds of perspectives, capture those, but then create some unique insights as I go around as a motivational speaker, share those insights as well as my insights from the space industry, that emerging technology, how we're incorporating emerging technology and space innovation in our daily lives. And then being a futurist, doing some things for some strategy development for some boards. So it's really a fun time to be an entrepreneur. Every day you wake up, you never know what's in your inbox. And so I love living like that. And again, I'm so excited to be with you and that we're on this journey together because you've interviewed over 1,000 people. So my 200 is nothing compared to the amazing leaders you've interviewed.
Wow, so um, I always ask my wife and my friends when we talk about your stories, what took you so long to write those amazing books? Because in that journey of the four chapters you've been having, right, you met so amazing people, you've been experiencing so many wonderful technologies, you've been doing the work that only a very small portion of the people on earth is having the opportunity to even know about or heard about the name of this technology, not even talk about having that real life experience of that, right? So tell us what took you so long to write books for us to know more about that.
Well, you have to gain enough knowledge and wisdom to be able to write books. And for a long time, I never thought I wanted to write a book. But as I was in that third chapter, being the chief operating officer, I would mentor people or I would go around and give talks. And people would come up to me afterwards and say, "Oh, do you have this written down? Do you have a book?" But the real catalyst was somebody asked me if I would write a chapter in their book, and it was on women in STEM. And so that's what I did. I wrote that chapter and I interviewed some of my friends and I included their stories. And after writing that chapter, I thought, well, I could write a book like this. And that was the catalyst that encouraged me to realize that I could share and give back, because that's really what the books are about. They're about writing down what not only I've learned, but other people have learned in their journeys, so that the people who listen to the interviews or read the books, we help make their journey easier, that their transitions or professional development, that they get to leapfrog through things that we might have had to learn the hard way.
Wow. And we want to see the journey growing from when you were very little, okay? And in the fourth chapter of your life is you join the Air Force, you travel the world, you experience the space technology, then you grow to become a CEO for the Space Foundation, right? And then starting the current chapter as entrepreneur and keynote speakers and authors, helping people to expand their horizon. So, Shelli, when you were little, what was your dream about the future that you are going to do, or the job that you are going to add values to the world?
Well, the real goal is, can you have an impact? And can you help people better their daily lives? And that's how I really look at why I'm so excited about space technology, leadership, innovation, and that emerging technology, because those are things that can help people better their daily lives. Right now we're talking on Microsoft Teams, but all of telecommunications, its lineage dates back to the Apollo era. All telecommunications was designed initially 60 years ago so that NASA could talk to astronauts. And then from that, companies, entrepreneurs commercialize that technology, and now all of us are able to use it. And so there's so many ways that technology, whether it's emerging technology, space technology, are helping everyday citizens, whether they're farmers, machinists, or people like you and me who are doing podcasts or writing books, how we're able to incorporate that technology to make our daily lives better.
So impact was a theme
Impact.
since child, right? Wow. So the question is, was that something that you have it innate inside of you, or is that something that along the journey of growing up that Shelli is starting to build that dream of one day when she grows up, she's going to do the job that create more impact to the world?
So I think growing up, even as a child, I always wanted to make a difference. I did a lot of things. I was in debate, I did plays, a lot of things, even joining the military. And the Air Force had a lot of those same qualities of making a difference, having an impact. You want to go to a place, you always want to leave it better than you found it. You want to make it easier for the people who will always come after you, because you're only in a place for 2 or 3 or 4 years. So you always want to leave it better than you found it. And so those traits are connected to my values. And then as you get older, you realize that how fortunate you are, how fortunate I was to have all the opportunities afforded to me through the military, through wonderful mentorship. And so that's part of where I am today. It's about making that impact by paying it forward, helping the next generation so that they can have those same opportunities or even better opportunities. Because again, I might have learned the hard way. Maybe I can make it easier for someone else to find their path easier.
Wow. So if you trace back into your family or the people next to you when you were little, who was the person that had that influence on that little Shelli that she want to do that path though?
Well, my mom was a really great influence on me. She was an amazing leader. She had a corporate job where she was a senior executive. She also had a side hustle. We all talk about having a side hustle, but she was very entrepreneurial. So she was a senior executive, and then she had these side businesses that she was doing in addition to having a full-time job. So that entrepreneurial spirit. But then when I talked to my grandmother, who also passed away a couple years ago, but she was very entrepreneurial. You know, she had a farm, they ran a tavern, you know, a bar. So my grandparents were very entrepreneurial. So I saw that that entrepreneurial spirit and mindset ran through my family, especially, you know, the ladies of our family. So I'm excited that I'm now an entrepreneur following in their footstep, just a little different. I'm not going to be a farmer or a barkeeper or a, you know, an entrepreneur like my mom, but I'm creating this entrepreneurship by being a speaker and a writer and a futurist. And so that spirit. But, you know, you can only connect the dots when you look back. You know,
Mm.
looking forward, you don't know what the dots really are. You might have a plan and you hope you're going to connect dots, but sometimes the path changes. But you can really connect the dots when you look backward and see who were those influences around you.
Wow, wow. So if you pick either between your mom or your grandmom, right? And if there was a piece of wisdom that you still remember when they shared with you when you were little, that leading to what you've been doing, across the four chapters of your life, who would that person be, and what kind of advice that you still remember to today, Shelly?
Well, I really remember my mom, and she was very motivated that and saying, "You can do anything you want to do. You might have to study and apply yourself." And even in my second book that just came out in October, What Space Got to Do with It, an Interstellar Guide to Success, I talk about my mom and the dedication and how we used to listen to books on tape from Zig Ziglar and other motivational speakers. You know, I was too young to even realize how important that was, but she would play those tapes because back in that day, that's what you had, the little cassette tapes. And she would have these different tapes that we would listen to Zig Ziglar and other motivational speakers. And I think that created that foundation of motivation, of positive attitudes, of, you know, tough times never last, but tough people do. Um, from Robert Schuller. Those things stuck in my youth and then growing up that, you know, always be positive, look for a positive way, even negative things. I call it the space mindset. Even when you see obstacles or negative things, they can be opportunities for launch pads to new things, to better things, to change things, to learn things. So don't think even of roadblocks or negative things as bad. Think of them as opportunities to learn and grow and develop. So that's what a space mindset is.
Wow. And what she did, wisdom right there. Right? She knew that something was working for her and for a lot of people. And every day she has to join with you to listen to those tapes, to read those books, to have that, emerging into your life. Given back then, at that stage, you might not understand about what it is, and you might not like it about it also. But eventually, you will realize that when the dot has started to connect, right? So back then, when your mother asked you, what's your mother's name?
Betty.
Betty. Okay. So when Betty asked you to listen to those tapes, how did you feel?
I enjoyed it. I didn't
Oh, you
really think,
enjoyed it.
yeah, I
Wow.
enjoyed it. It was good. I enjoyed it. I've always been a lifelong learner. I love trying new things, learning new things. So I enjoyed it. And again, it's uplifting positive messages of how you can do things, not how you can't. A lot of times in society, we might think we can't do things, but in reality, we can. We just have to figure it out. Maybe we need different education, whether it's formal, informal, or volunteering to get that experience. Maybe we need to join networks that help expand our reach and help us find people, or maybe we need to find mentors. So it's not about limitations, it's about possibility. And
Mhm.
it doesn't just happen. You have to take action. And so I think those tapes growing up and my mom's positive attitude that you can do or be anything you want, you'll just have to work hard, that has paid off over time. And again, I'm now in that fourth chapter of my journey. And by writing it down and giving talks, hopefully I'm doing the same thing for someone else, creating positiveness in their life of how they can. Yes, there can be challenges, but you can overcome them.
You are doing that. So the word hopefully is not needed. You are already doing that. Okay. Thank you for
Well,
doing
thank
that,
you.
Shelly. Yeah. So now, because we talk about the wisdom your mom had, and your grandma, and the journey that you've been working with a lot of amazing people. I want to dive into a definition, because I think it's the ground foundation is important for people to understand what wisdom is before we, like escalate to a different, area of discussion. So, what, in your own definition, in your own words, how do you define wisdom?
That is a really hard definition, because wisdom is more than knowledge. Some people think they get a degree and they have wisdom. That's knowledge. Knowledge is actually being able to take the knowledge, add it to experience, and then that gives you a foundation for wisdom. And so it does take time to develop wisdom. It's more than book smarts. Some in the US we have a saying, sometimes it's called street smarts. And so yes, you need book smarts, you need street smarts, which I call that experience of being in the space industry, that experience of going through leadership, through multiple organizations, that experience of interacting with a diversity of people in different backgrounds, different careers, different regions of the world. And that experience plus knowledge can then give you the wisdom to make better choices, to say better things. And sometimes wisdom is knowing when not to say something.
Wow. So the knowledge plus the experience. So that becoming the wisdom. Wisdom for us to say something, to do something, and sometimes wisdom also coming in the form of doing nothing, say nothing also, right? Yeah.
That is wisdom. Sometimes you may hear people say something and you want to comment, but sometimes it's better to say nothing. And so that is also wisdom with patience and tolerance and empathy. So wisdom doesn't act alone. It has those other things, patience, empathy, that go with it.
Wow. I think then let's start with knowledge first, right? And if we look at the world that we have today in our hand, we have a phone, we have, computer and everything,
Yes,
and we have also coming with a paradox of choice. So many things that you and I can access at the same time, and it's hard for us to assess what is best for our wisdom. Put it that way, right? So, how do you select the information that worthwhile for Shelli to absorb it and to learn, and maybe to share with other people, and what to not doing?
So I think that's a really great place. And I did write a lot of that in this second book. It has four main pillars: leadership, awareness, access, and action. And that first pillar is about self leadership. And that's what we're really talking about.
Mm.
What you need to do in self leadership is do like a SWOT analysis: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. You need to really know yourself. What are you good at? What are you passionate about? How do you want to make a difference, like I did? What are your weaknesses? What could you improve on? How could you be better? What are those opportunities out there? What are the threats? And what happens by having that self awareness is you create a focus. What is your SWOT? And then where do you really want to go? Where do you want to go 1, 3, 5 years? I always ask that whenever I meet somebody who says, what should I do? Well, where do you want to go? Because if you don't know where you want to go, all roads will take you there. But it's best to know, do the SWOT analysis, and then where do you want to go? And then you can create a focus, because it's easy, as you said, to get distracted. The internet, there's a lot out there. But if you know where you want to go and you know what your strengths are and where you want to focus and what your weaknesses are, you can start to create a plan. And so when something comes in that's outside the plan, you're able to move that to the side. Not forever, but maybe for right now. And I call that's also in book 1. It's under chapter 9, called mindfulness. We really need to be mindful and control our mind, control our thinking. So it ties in with that self-leadership so that we can accomplish the goals we want. There are days that if I let email or WhatsApp, there's so many distractions with LinkedIn and so on. You really have to focus yourself, or you may not really accomplish the big things you want to accomplish. And for me, writing a book, takes a great deal of time and focus. And if you allow the little things that might distract you from that, you won't be able to accomplish that. And I think that's what happens to a lot of people in society. They start to feel overwhelmed.
Mm.
Overwhelmed. There's so much content out there. There's TV and on demand and, YouTube and everything. And what is really important is you need to disconnect. You need to really do the SWOT analysis. You really need to be mindful about what's important to you and your family and where you want to be, and then put the plan in place. And sometimes you just have to turn it off. Sometimes when I write, I shut everything down, shut down email, shut down everything. Somebody had told me once when I did an interview that every time you're distracted, like by an email coming in, and you stop what you're doing and you look at it and you come back, it can take you 30 minutes to refocus on the task you were doing. So I kind of share that with you and your audience. I know you don't have a problem with all the amazing interviews you've done and all the wonderful programs you're doing and all the things you've told me you've got coming up. But sometimes people can feel overwhelmed. I feel overwhelmed sometimes. You get all the emails, they're coming in, but sometimes you just got to shut it off and really focus on what's important to you. The other thing I'll say is you don't have to do it all in one day. What are those goals? And can you do one small thing today? Maybe writing a book. Wow, that seems so big. But I didn't do it in one day. I broke it out and I started with interviews, and then I started capturing thoughts, and then I started, writing an outline. And as long as you can do a little bit every day, you're going to move towards your goal, and that will be okay. Some days you'll do a lot and some days you'll do a little, but just as long as you try every day to do a little bit.
Wow. You know what? Every day I have a ritual. A ritual of what I'm reading a random quote in this book. It has 8,789 quote of wisdom. And today, the quote that I received was many drops of water make an ocean. And it is exactly like you just share, right? So you focus and you put into small little things and you keep doing that small little things, and then eventually those will add up to the goal that you want to accomplish, right? And all the things that you shared is very, very basic, but it's really, really hard for so many people out there, Shelli. Like goal setting. We know how important of goal setting, right? But then if I look at so many people, they setting the goals that really, really like not the goal that they want to have, or the kind of goals that will lead them to a life that fulfilling of happy or being able to make impact or something like that. So because of that, maybe they've been chasing the wrong life for so long and ended up so miserable, not happy, not doesn't want to do things anymore, right? So if for Shelli, what kind of goal are you setting for yourself, and how do you do that in your life?
Wonderful. Well, I think it's really important to think about the big picture. For many of my years, I was in the military, the Air Force. I had a corporate job, so you're busy and you're away from your family. And part of my balance for this chapter of my life, this entrepreneurial chapter, is my husband is my partner. I want to spend more quality time with my family. The one thing in life that is our most limited resource, our most precious resource, is time. You can make more money, you can do other things, but you can't get time back. Mm-hmm. So in this chapter of my journey, my husband's my chief operating officer. So similar to you and your wife as well, how you work together, we're now working together. And then what I do is, so it's important to have the family element to bring joy, to make sure that I'm not working too much, although as an entrepreneur, you're always working. And then really focusing, how do I want to give back, and how is that sustainable for me? And how does that have a lasting legacy? And as you know, I interviewed you for my third book. That was one of the questions I asked you. What is your legacy going to be? And I really feel that by writing the books, I'm creating that legacy, because even after someday I don't want to talk, or do motivational speaking, or I'm retired, the books will live on. And I interviewed somebody last week who actually said, in 20 years, the way that people will learn through education, a lot of it will be through AI and large language models. And they were like, in 20 years, that large language model might pull my books to help somebody who wants to learn about space or leadership or innovation. So that was kind of a fun way to think about this could be the legacy I'm leaving by writing this book series. And as you know, there's going to be multiple books. The first two are out, and then you're going to be in the third one, which is called Out of This World Leadership. So the first book's about personal growth. The second one's about professional mastery. And then the third one will be about leadership excellence. So I'm really excited. And again, who knows? I don't know if in 20 years, ChatGPT will be the one pulling some information from my book. Maybe it'll give me credit or not. I don't know. But hopefully some student somewhere will be able to pull that as a reference to help them in their journey.
Beautiful, beautiful. Isn't it crazy that the technologies today is being able to get so much of knowledge everywhere from anyone, right? So to have us to become a better man, better woman, better, like contributor into this world. That leads into the next question, into the second puzzle of a second piece of your definition of wisdom, which is experience, right? Because I can have a lot of knowledge, and I've been seeing a lot of people like that, but I don't know how to do the best out of that knowledge and that becoming a waste. I have so much, gold in my hand. I didn't know how to make wealth from those goals. So for you, what can we do to build that kind of wisdom, and from that strength, that muscle of building, we've been able to merge knowledge and experience and make it become wisdom in life?
So obviously one example is similar to mine. I have over 30 years experience in the space and aerospace industry, but the goal is, by writing that experience down, by mentoring others, that helps others who can make leaps and bounds. They don't have to wait 30 years to build experience. So yes, you need knowledge, whatever that is. That could be formal or informal education. And then knowledge can come from, or experience can come from your experience, or you could learn from others' experiences. And that's why mentorship is so important, because it helps people, overcome things faster. Maybe they learn from other experiences. What I've put in the books is not only is each chapter share my story, but 3 global thought leader stories. But at the end of each chapter, it shares, it's called turning insight into action. It's what people can do next. Maybe it's books, maybe it's podcasts they can read or watch. Maybe it's taking a class that's free or low cost, no cost. So it provides those opportunities to people, and that way they can get experience faster and then get to. So you don't have to do the experience yourself. You can learn from others. Now there are some things that it's wonderful to have the experience yourself, but it's wonderful to learn from other people's failures and not make those same mistakes.
So how do we, like, for beginners, how do they approach other people that can help them to gain the right kind of experience? And the reason is, I asked that question is, there's a lot of people sound wise out there, acting wise out there, but then, it's just not really a wise individual or people that we should invest time and effort and resources to follow. Otherwise, it would take us to a very wrong direction, right? So we need to really be able to filter and select the type of mentor, people that can mentor in us also. How do we do that?
Absolutely. So I think, first of all, you can gain experience in multiple ways. Obviously, you can watch podcasts, you can read books. So, there's a lot of podcasts. I learn all the time when I'm watching podcasts. I'm writing notes, or you could read books. So there's a lot of great books out there, Good to Great, Atomic Habits. So you can read a lot of good things. You can watch other people, and a lot of people write, or they do interviews. So even if you don't know somebody, you can still learn from their experience. Maybe it's somebody in the space industry that you're excited to learn from, or it's somebody that's an entrepreneur and maybe you can read some of their insights. But then another way is you could join those organizations. So there could be organizations, let's say you want to be a program manager. I'm also a program manager. So you could join Project Management Institute. They're located globally. Maybe they have some local meetings. So you could start to network with those people. And by joining those type of organizations that you're interested in, because remember, you did the SWOT analysis, which is in chapter 1. You know what you're passionate about. You know your goals. So now you can find those organizations that you could continue to learn, but then meet people. And through those meetings, you can find mentors. You can also find mentors online. A lot of organizations are also virtual. So there's another great one for space leaders, for young space leaders, called Space Generation Advisory Council. It's for members 35 and younger. They're not only local, but they're global. So you could even go online, you can find people, and they help each other all the time. They share information about where things are and scholarships. So you build these networks because now you know what you're interested in. You find those like-minded people. And a lot of times through those networks, you can then create mentoring opportunities. And then, of course, there's the cold call. And that can be a little more challenging, but that is looking for somebody that you're interested in. Maybe they have a journey or a story or something. Maybe you can find them on LinkedIn and they'll give you, I always like to call it a 20-minute interview or courtesy meeting. Asking somebody to mentor you that doesn't really know you can be a lot to ask, but maybe they'll at least give you 15 or 20 minutes of their time. And maybe you could find a few people who would answer some questions for you and share their wisdom. So those are some ways. I highly recommend the networking. It does take longer, but you're building real relationships with people that are in the industry or the area that you're passionate about. You're going to build those relationships with them over time. They will help you find jobs, network for other things. So it's not just finding those mentors. Those relationships can help you find a lot of things. So those are a couple ways, the education plus experience can lead you to the wisdom.
And I remember what you just shared made me remember our first conversation together on your way up in your journey. You've been reaching out to a lot of people that have been helping you to achieve the next big things, right? Maybe you pick a story to share that can inspire people who are listening to this conversation, so that they be having more confidence, learning from your wisdom to expand the network and see the benefit of being proactively in networking.
Absolutely. So a lot of the opportunities I have are from building those networks, whether it was a lot of my speaking events are based on people who know me. I just spoke to somebody in Brazil, and while I was talking to her about my book, she said, "Oh, by the way, I've recommended you to be a speaker at an event in Brazil in 2026. I hope you can come." And so by building those relationships with people, one, and their relationships, they're not, I called you once and I don't ever call you again. They're building relationships. You see something on LinkedIn that they posted, they got an award or something, you comment, you reach out periodically. Like you and I have known each other a couple years now. We don't talk every day, we don't talk every month, but we do communicate. And so you can have powerful relationships. And I have some relationships where there are people that I talk to every month. And then there are relationships where, you connect and you find common ground and you help to collaborate and move things forward. And so your relationships will be different. The other thing I'm going to highlight is these organizations. They're going to transition as you transition. I also included that in my book too, about networks. Networks will have a duration. So when I was early in my career in the Air Force, there were certain networking organizations that I participated in. They really helped me understand the military and the Air Force and, the values. But then as I transitioned into my next career in the Air Force, leaving being an enlisted airman to being an officer, there were other organizations I joined and participated in. And then eventually I joined Project Management Institute and Women in Aerospace. And so you have the opportunity to also join organizations And then as your career changes and you change, you can change too. And even Space Generation Advisory Council, I highlighted to you, it's for young space STEM professionals 35 and younger. So once you turn 36, you're not in SGAC anymore. So
Mhm.
organizations can change. And that's all part of, remember that first part, that self leadership. Every year, you should be doing a SWOT analysis on yourself. What did you improve last year? We were just talking, we're coming up to the end of the year. Well, this is a good time to assess. What did we accomplish this year? How did all those little drops create the ocean, right?
Yeah.
And what did you accomplish? What are the big takeaways from this year? And now, as you think about closing out the year with gratitude, I think every leader has three main traits. That's inspirational, authenticity, and gratitude. You're grateful for the wonderful year you've had. Now we can look to what does next year have? What are the things we want to accomplish? What is the impact? How does that tie into the bigger strategy of where you want to go? Um, and you can start to lay that. And this is a really good time as we close out the year to think about the end of the year, the end of this chapter, and opening up next year new and fresh with new ideas, new inspiration to continue the journey.
Wow. You make me so happy because you know that my wife and I we founded a platform called helloNEWNESS. All right, and the newness is for a very long time. My wife and I look at change management practice, and we look at corporations that be investing money, resources to help people to cope with change, to create change, and build habits of change around change, right? And then guess what? Next year they do the same program. They do the same program, which means something's not working along the way. And individual, like for me, I have a very long time in the past learning about personal development, but didn't move anything at all until So it means that a part of me was very resistant to change, and a part of me was not. A part of the process is not working. So we try to figure out what's the missing puzzle of the change management, the practice along the way. So during our interview with amazing leaders in 100 countries, you included, right? And you just mentioned about newness, something new that we can bring into our life every day, and that can help us to get ourselves ahead of change. So when change comes, we already get familiar with that. We already ahead of the game, and we can take change any angles they come, anytime they come, anywhere they come, right? So if you look at your life, if you look at the journey of the amazing people around you that you have a chance to meet, to interact, to work with, or to talk to, right? And you see how newness has impact into their life, into your life. What do you see about that?
I think that's really important. It's good to look at what you've done, but how can we improve it? So many things are changing. It's part of that SWOT analysis. You have the internal control and the external control. So what's happening that's new that we should be incorporating, that we should be thinking about, that we could be getting better? And that's part of being that lifelong learner. So that's also really important. Reading those books, watching podcasts, looking for free, low cost ways to keep our skills sharp because everything is changing. We're seeing a lot with artificial intelligence. How can we incorporate that into our daily lives? How does that help us do things? And so I love how you highlighted that, we don't just take the 1 year, dust it off and change it for next year. It's really about taking that step back. This was a wonderful year. Now, what do I want to do next year that's even more bolder or more exciting? Or how does that want to have an impact? Like this year, we wrote this book, which is about that professional mastery. But I know next year, leadership is so important because leadership is what inspires others to accomplish great things, and you don't have to be a leader of people. Like, I mean, in a company, you can be a leader. People see you on social media. People can see you giving talks. You can inspire people and be a leader no matter where you are. You don't need a title to be a leader. And so for next year, it's really that importance of how everyday leaders can have big impacts and help others in their journey. And again, it's about having that impact. And then what are the other things? One of the things I really put on my target for 2026 was I wanted to be at the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas in January 2026. It's one of the largest, technology conventions in the world, brings together leaders from everywhere, but I didn't want to just be a participant. I wanted to find a way to be actively engaged. And so I found a way to apply and be accepted to be a judge at the Consumer Electronics Show for emerging technology, which is what I'm passionate about, emerging technology. And so I've already evaluated my companies. They've already been selected. They'll be unveiled in January 2026. I'll be there. But that was something I visioned. I put on my vision for in January 2025. I want to be there in 2026. I want to be a participant. I want to be active. I don't want to just show up and hang out. And so I manifested that. I mean, I don't know if I manifested it, but I took the actions that were required to make that happen. And so those are some of the things I'm doing for 2026. And so I share with your audience, if you want to make things happen, you have to take the action, have the vision, have the goals, and then take the action to make that happen and manifest that reality. And when you start to create those type of things, it creates a legacy of the things you can do. And so I'm really excited about that. So for any of your listeners, if you're going to be in Las Vegas, January 6th through the 9th, please let me know. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn and we'll get together at the Consumer Electronics Show.
Beautiful, beautiful. So exciting for you. It's one of the biggest show in the world also. And you becoming in the panel as a judge to share your experience, to have, to have companies to promote the product and the technology. That's beautiful. On the thing that you share, right? There's one thing I wanna emphasize in here is I think the resilience is important. When you say that and I note down here. You see me sometimes I put my head down once I put the notes in here. Okay. Yes. So it's a commitment, it's a determination to make, from inside to actions, make something from there. And earlier when I talk about the, ocean is made from, like dropping waters, right? A lot of people having water drop at the beginning. And then along the way, they stopped dropping water. They gave up. And that's why they couldn't see the result. They couldn't see the beauty of the journey. They couldn't, bear the hard, the challenge along the way. So what did you do? What have you been doing on your journey to help you to not give it up? Because everything you've been doing is really challenging. Every goal that you set out is really fast, fast stretch, right? So share with us so that we can learn from your experience, that we can build that curiosity a little longer.
Absolutely. I love how you highlighted resilience. And it's really like those drops. Each drop adds to the ocean. And those drops are consistency.
Mm-hmm.
Consistency is resilience. And so every day you get up and you keep trying. So even if the Consumer Electronics Show wouldn't have happened, something else would have happened. And so, what you see on LinkedIn isn't the reality. I also, I have a notebook as well. But what I do is I write down the things that I want to manifest for each month. Some of them happen. I write for Forbes Technology Council or Global Trends Magazine. I apply for speaking events. Sometimes you get them, sometimes you don't. But what pays off is the consistency, continuing the drops until you create the ocean. You may not get everything, and that's okay. You'll get the most important things. And what will happen is that becomes the knowledge plus experience. And your trying, your consistency, your resilience is the experience that leads to wisdom.
Beautiful, beautiful. I have a few last questions for this conversation. The next one is how to build the bridge between wisdom from one generation to the next generation. I see a lot of separations, and it seems like the separation is getting even more separating at the moment. And we want to bridge that gap. We want to see how we be able to, to learn from other generation experience, and then also share our knowledge, but for the other generation to be able to take them all and make a better place for everybody. So what can we do, Shelly?
Absolutely. Well, I think the first thing you're doing is wonderful, capturing these podcasts, sharing this knowledge with others. People can then listen to it. Are we writing this knowledge down? And then, of course, one of the things I do love to do is I do try to mentor every year. And so this year I had a couple programs I mentored. One was with World Space Week. So every year is World Space Week in October, where the world celebrates space. But they had a mentoring program called Astropreneurs. And I had a wonderful protege. I'm still mentoring her from Azerbaijan. And so we're still working together, meeting monthly. So those are, I said, some relationships are more, we keep in touch, but then some people you meet with monthly. So when I have mentors, I always meet with them monthly. I also had another program that I worked with over the summer. So it's Blue Marble Space Science Institute. So for your listeners, you can check that out. Every summer, they have a young scientist program, and you can be a scientist from anywhere in the world because it's virtual. And so I was a mentor for that program, and we had some wonderful proteges that were part of the Young Scientist program through Blue Marble Space Science Institute. And then I'm also a mentor for a program called GPODS, Global Policy, Diplomacy, and Sustainability. And they have 3 cohorts a year. And this year I did a talk in August for their cohort in August, and then attended and spoke at their graduation ceremony. So I always try to find ways to pay it forward. The other thing I've done with the leadership from the GPODs, they actually have an institute that's out of the US, India, and the UK, and it's called Global Policy Insights. And I went to the founder of that and I said, his name is Arpit. I said, Arpit, I'm writing this book series. I'd love to interview all the other mentors like me that are part of this program. And he said, well, that'd be great. But in addition to that, why don't we write some articles? So after you interview them, put them in your books, but then let's also create like a monthly article gaining insights from those leaders. And many of them are diplomats and ambassadors, and they're in India, they're in the UK, they're in Europe, they're in the US, they're in the Middle East. And so what I did was I said, let's do it. And I've started interviewing those individuals he shared with me, capturing them for my book, but also capturing enough. And that's going to be a project we're going to start after the first of the year, starting to release those interviews, insights with those amazing thought leaders who are part of the GPODS mentoring program. So there's a lot of ways that individuals can help contribute to the knowledge. You can write it down. You can give a talk. Maybe wherever you are, maybe you can go talk to a student field trip. Maybe you can invite them to come visit your company. They can get a tour and see what you do and your company does. You could be a science fair judge. So we all have a way that we can pay it forward to help the next generation, but we just have to build bridges and take the time because it's important. And that's all, again, part of that self-leadership, that mindfulness, what's important. I shared with you the importance of my family because it's easy to forget family or paying it forward or finding time to mentor others unless you make it a conscious choice.
I mean, everything you do is, when I look at it, is one word is sustainability. So you want to build a future sustainable for a lot of people, and thank you for doing that. You went through into the storm to figure out how to get out of the storm, so that people will be able to be more resilient, to be more ready for storms in their life. Right? That's beautiful. I want to say thank you for doing that, Shelly.
Well, I want to thank you for what you're doing. I think it's incredible what you and your wife have done, interviewing over 1,000 leaders, starting during COVID when everything was, a crisis. Remember that, SWOT analysis, that was a big threat. And you found a way, like I said, you found a way to make it positive, just like it was when I was young, listening to those tapes with my mom, finding the positiveness, having that space mindset that looks at obstacles and says, this isn't an obstacle, this is an opportunity. And that's what you did by starting your series and all the great things you're doing. I'm so honored to be part of this series, and I look forward to the future series and partnering with you on those as well.
Absolutely, but I'm not yet saying goodbye to you, Shelly. I have two last questions.
That's okay. That's okay.
Because I wanna 2 months ago, my wife and I, again, it's the manifestation, like you say. We draw on a long row and we say, okay, what's next for us, and what's next for Vivian, right? Because um, Vivian always fascinating about sustainability, because it's the things that, the way that you do, the way that a lot of amazing people out there doing is to make something that's sustainable for other people. And right now, the definition of a sustainability is not unified, or it's different from different, angle, different people, different industry. So we want to just focus on one thing, is defining sustainability. So that we acquire a platform called sustainabilitymind.com. Okay, so it's a mindset of sustainability. I think that if we have that mindset, then we definitely be able to do something that consistently and resiliently every day to do to contribute to something that's sustainable for the future. So, in your own words, how do you define a sustainability mind?
So I really look at it as that legacy mindset. What is
Uh,
the legacy you want to leave? And again, that's part of how I grew up as well as in the military, leaving places better than you found them. You want to have things, as you said, sustainable. The other thing I like, in addition to sustainable, because you can do a lot of different things, but they may not be connected. And so what I call those are one-offs. I mean, they're good to do, but what's the longevity, the
uh,
sustainability, the legacy of that one thing? What if you had only done one interview? What if you'd only done five? What if you'd only done 10? No, you did 1,000. That's sustainability. That's a legacy. You can write a book, you can do all kinds of things with what you've done. And that's how I look at it. I've been writing Forbes articles for almost 4 years. I'm starting to think, well, maybe I should take some of those articles and write a book. I'm writing a series of articles for a magazine called Global Trends on entrepreneurship. And my thinking is, well, maybe I should someday write a book on entrepreneurship. Guess what book 4 is going to be? Entrepreneurship.
entrepreneurs.
So what I say to you, and you're already demonstrating that to your audience, is it's good when you're young to try different things, try different groups, meet different people. But at some point, it's good when the things you do intersect, because that creates that lasting legacy. So not only do I do talks, but I write the books, and then I write articles, and all of those things intersect with each other to create a strong foundation, that legacy, that body of work, I call it. They call that. So think about that as your sustainability or legacy mindset. How do you create that interconnectedness of the things you do? So it's creating a strong foundation for the next generation. I have a friend who's a female samurai warrior from Japan, and she highlighted that, none of us are self-made because we are standing on the shoulders of our ancestors.
Wow.
And so that's what I say. As you're building your legacy, your foundation, you're creating that body of knowledge, whether it's books or podcasts or hard work or building a company or doing good things or helping others or creating scholarships or mentoring. You're creating a foundation that's going to help the next generation to stand even higher, to reach even greater heights, to explore the universe and beyond.
Beautiful. Last question. I want to bring you to one of the nights that your mother and you listen to those tapes from Zig Ziglar, okay? And you and I are gonna walk into that room. You and I are gonna meet that little Shelly and Betty, okay? And you are going to talk to Betty and tell her something about what she did has been impacting on you and the journey that you've been growing up into today. And you have a chance to talk to her back then, now, okay? So what is that she, Shelly now will talk to Betty then and to that Shelly then?
I would tell her that she was a great mother and that she imparted her wisdom on me. What I say is, when you're a parent or a leader or in that role, you never know if you're good enough or if the advice you gave was strong enough or you empowered your children to be successful. And I know my mom did everything she could to help me be successful, but she may have not known that when I was still little. But I would love to go back to that younger Betty and younger Michelle, as you know, my real name, Michelle, not Shelly, and let her know that she was a wonderful mother and I turned out okay.
Wow. Wow. Thank you so much for this beautiful conversation. And absolutely, you are doing wonderful thing in this world to carry what your friend in Japan was saying. Like we sit on top of the
Hmm.
shadow of the ancestor, right? So what your mom has been doing in the past was to help you to build that bridge, and then now you keep raising the bar and helping people to build something greater from on top of that. And thank you for doing that. I would love you to see you in person one day. All right. So let's manifest about that. Let's make it a plan. And for sure, one day we're going to meet together. So, okay.
I would love that. And until then, I look forward to seeing you and Vivian around the galaxy.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Have a beautiful evening. And tell your husband I say hello from Vietnam also, please.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye bye.